This is the news in brief from the United Nations. UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres addressed the Munich Security Conference on Friday, where he called for a global order that works for everyone. Although the world is facing existential challenges, the international community is more fragmented and divided than at any time during the past 75 years, he said, with countries doing whatever they like with no accountability. Mr. Guterres stressed that if countries fulfilled their obligations under the UN Charter, every person on earth would live in peace and dignity. The Secretary-General also addressed the situation in Gaza, calling it an appalling indictment of the deadlock in global relations. Humanitarian operations there are on life support, he added, and barely functioning. He warned against an all-out offensive on the city of Rafah, which is at the core of the entire humanitarian aid operation in Gaza and where 1.5 million Palestinian civilians are now sheltering.
I've repeatedly called for an immediate and unconditional release of all hostages and a humanitarian ceasefire. That is the only way to massively scale up aid delivery in Gaza.
Moving on to Ukraine, he said 2 years into the war, the cost in human lives and suffering is appalling, while the impact on the global economy has been particularly devastating for developing countries.
We desperately need a just and sustained peace for Ukraine, for Russia and for the world, but a peace in line with UN Charter and international law, which establishes the obligation to respect the territorial integrity of sovereign states.
The UN Human Rights Office, OHCHR, said it was appalled at the news on Friday that jailed Russian opposition leader Alexei Navalny had died in prison. Mr. Navalny, 47, was an outspoken critic of the Kremlin and an anti-corruption campaigner who had survived several attempts against his life. He was serving a 19-year sentence on extremism charges at a penal colony in the Arctic Circle where he died, according to Russian authorities. OHCHR has urged the Russian authorities to ensure a credible investigation into his death, spokesperson Liz Thrussell said in a statement. The office also called on the Russian authorities to end the persecution of politicians, human rights defenders, and journalists, among others. Globally, 1.4 billion children aged 15 and under lack any form of social protection, leaving them vulnerable to disease, poor nutrition, and poverty. The finding comes in a report released this week by the International Labour Organization, ILO, Save the Children, and UN Children's Agency, UNICEF. In poorer countries, less than 1 in 10 children in the 15 and under age group have access to child benefits, a critical form of social protection. Child benefits, which are paid in cash or tax credits, are essential for reducing poverty and ensuring access to health care, nutrition, quality education, and water and sanitation. As a result, many children are deprived of the basic resources and services they need to escape poverty. The report urged governments to ensure all children are shielded by social protection mechanisms, including through universal child benefits. Dianne, Penn, UN News.